Kiyan, a witcher from the School of the Cat, known for his professionalism and held in high regard by many affluent clients. After fulfilling a contract for Prince Adrian and impressing him, he was offered a position as one of the prince's bodyguards. Kiyan never accepted this offer and boarded a ship headed to Novigrad and was never seen or heard from again. In this video, we're going to be taking a look into what actually happened to the Witcher Kiyan and why he was never seen again. Let's start from the beginning of Kiyan's last contract, which will give us some insight into what Kiyan was really like. This was a contract given to him by Prince Adrian, where he was tasked with escorting a group of archaeologists as they searched the ruins of Est Tyar for elven weapon diagrams. Included in the diagrams the archaeologists were searching for were the diagrams for forging weapons from the School of the Cat, which was partly why Kiyan was interested in taking this contract. As Kiyan accepted the contract, he swore to Prince Adrian that none of the archaeologists would leave the ruins alive. And he was right, as Kiyan was the only one that left the ruins after the expedition had concluded. After recovering the diagrams they had came for, it was late and they decided to set up camp for the rest of the night before heading out of the ruins the next day. It was quiet, and most of them were resting and studying the recovered diagrams to pass the time. Kiyan sat alone watching them and planning how he was going to kill them without anyone escaping. He decided to take them out one by one, silently from the shadows. He began slitting some of the archaeologists' throats, which he was able to do out of sight as they were quite spread out. As he killed what seemed to be the last archaeologist, he realised one of the bedrolls was empty, meaning he had one more left. The last archaeologist was Sigismund Gloger, who had come back just in time to see Kiyan running his blade across the neck of one of his companions, which frightened him and made him run for his life. Kiyan's enhanced Witcher senses allowed him to pick up the stomping footsteps of Sigismund fleeing. Kiyan ran in the direction of the footsteps and caught sight of Sigismund leaping into one of the many portals the ruins contained. Kiyan knew this portal could have transported Sigismund anywhere within the ruins and knew there was no point in following him through. Kiyan gathered the diagrams, as well as the heads of the archaeologists, as proof of the completion of his task. He then headed for the entrance of Est Tyar, where he set up a campsite and waited for a few days to see if Sigismund would find his way out of the ruins, to which he would be killed. While waiting, Kiyan placed the heads of the archaeologists in jars of vinegar to preserve them. This was something he took pride in. After a few days had passed, Kiyan was satisfied that Sigismund would not be making his way out of the ruins and set off back to Drummond Castle to collect his payment. When Kiyan reached Drummond Castle, he presented the preserved heads along with the weapon diagrams to Prince Adrian. Kiyan also explained how one of the archaeologists managed to jump through a portal, but ensured Prince Adrian that he would not be making his way out of the ruins alive. Prince Adrian was so impressed with how Kiyan carried out the contract that he offered him a place in his personal guard. Kiyan declined this offer, as he still had more diagrams belonging to the School of the Cat to find. Kiyan set off on a ship named the Flying Stag, which was the last time anyone ever saw him. The events that transpired within this contract shows that Kiyan isn't bothered by killing innocent people for his own personal gain. It also gives an insight on the level of professionalism he was known for, as instead of just telling Prince Adrian the archaeologists had been killed, he brought back their heads preserved in jars as proof. This shows the high level of pride Kiyan took in his work as a witcher. Now that we know what kind of person Kiyan is, let's get on to what happened to the Witcher in the end. Kiyan, now aboard the Flying Stag, headed for Novigrad, ends up sharing a room with a suspicious mage who bribed the captain in order to stay in the same room as Kiyan. This mage was Irenaeus Vast Steingard, who had a keen interest in witches, specifically witches from the School of the Cat. Steingard had done a lot of research on the School of the Cat and had many theories he wanted to confirm, which included theories about the mutations, training methods, as well as the theory that the School of the Cat origins could be traced back to the elves. The way Steingard intended to confirm these theories was to kidnap a Cat School Witcher and interrogate them. Steingard knew finding a Cat School Witcher would be no easy task, which is why he paid a great sum of money to the captain in order to stay in the same room as Kiyan aboard the Flying Stag. Now in the same room as Kiyan, Steingard knew he had an even harder task ahead of him, which was the actual kidnapping and transporting of Kiyan to his lab. Over the next few days, Steingard studied and took note of Kiyan's movements and habits. He noted that Kiyan was sharp and wouldn't be easily tricked by a simple poison apple trick. Therefore, he had to devise a more intricate plan. Steingard finally decided to wait for Kiyan to rest, where he would place him under a powerful paralysis spell and then teleport him away. Steingard also decided that he would have to use another spell which would bring on a storm in order to give him enough cover and time to complete the teleportation. With the plan ready, all Steingard had to do now was wait for Kiyan to rest. With Kiyan sleeping, Steingard prepared his spell and began casting. This paralysis wasn't an instant spell, therefore Steingard had some time on his hands, which he used to rummage through Kiyan's belongings, where he discovered Kiyan's loot and notes from his last contract for Prince Adrian. Steingard came across the elven diagrams, which excited him as it partly confirmed his theory on the origins of the Cat School. Steingard couldn't wait to get back to his lab and interrogate Kiyan on his findings. With the paralysis spell completed and Kiyan ready to transport, Steingard conjured up a violent storm that started to rock the boat, causing enough noise for him to begin the teleportation. Steingard opened a portal and along with Kiyan's belongings and his own belongings, entered it. Relieved that the teleportation was successful in transporting him to his lab under Temple Isle in Novigrad, he began the preparations for his long-awaited interrogation. To prepare, Steingard strapped the still paralysed Kiyan to an operating-like table with a makeshift cell and forced him to ingest a serum which would render Kiyan half-conscious once the spell wears off. Steingard needed to wait for the paralysis to wear off before conducting any experiments or interrogations, so he continued with some of his other research, which was experimenting on drowners. After the paralysis spell had worn off, Steingard began his interrogation with the application of torture. Steingard noted that Kiyan was incredibly resistant to physical torture and only broke after being tortured intensely for 2 days straight. Some of the information Steingard got out of the interrogation included details on training methods, mutations, and information revealing that the origins of the Cat School were descended from the elves. After the 2-day interrogation, Steingard had all the information he wanted from Kiyan, and therefore had no use for him anymore. This is where Kiyan's story gets even darker, as what Steingard does to him from now onward is purely to see how far he can push Kiyan before killing him. With the interrogation over, Steingard administers a concoction of cowbane and hemlock, which typically provokes paralysis of the victim's nervous system and nerve endings, which ultimately leads to the death via suffocation. However, this wasn't the case with Kiyan. All it really did was cause some mild irritation in his nervous system, as the mutations within his body worked quickly to neutralize the harmful foreign concoction. This piqued Steingard's interest and gave him the idea of seeing how much punishment a witch's body could take before giving out. Steingard continued experimenting on Kiyan, administering him highly toxic concoctions which didn't kill him but caused immense pain. Steingard's experiments included poisoning, burning, freezing, starving, and dehydrating Kiyan. One experiment highlighted in Steingard's notes consisted of stinging Kiyan with sea wasp toxins and pouring ethyl alcohol on the wound to try and strengthen the toxin. These experiments went on longer than the initial interrogation and were far more painful. The outcome of these experiments turned Kiyan into a shell of his former self, causing him to lose his mind. After losing his mind, all he did was pace back and forth in his cell, muttering phrases to himself. What was left of Kiyan after these experiments was a submissive and unrecognisable monster. Steingard manipulated his mind into serving him as his minion. He even went as far as giving him a new name called Mad Kiyan. With Kiyan, or Mad Kiyan, now fully submissive to Steingard, Steingard made plans to have him do his bidding, but this was never the case, as before he could do that, he suddenly disappeared. He most likely fled the city of Novigrad because of the witch hunters arriving, or either was executed at the hand of the witch hunters for being involved with magic. Geralt finds Mad Kiyan in Steingart's lab and is forced to fight him, as Mad Kiyan's mind is still scrambled from the punishment he endured. During the fight with Mad Kiyan, he can still be heard yelling the phrases.
No good, no evil. Oh, seems you are bleeding.
Ultimately, Geralt kills Mad Kiyan and finally puts him out of his misery. And that is the story of Kiyan, the Witcher from the School of the Cat. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe for more lore videos in the future. Thanks.